All right, back now here at the KFYR Plus News Desk. And a New York Times article recently highlights a growing and urgent debate surrounding organ transplants here in this country, focusing on cases where organs are retrieved from patients still legally considered alive, raising, of course, ethical and legal questions about consent, brain death definitions, and also patient rights. Now, this startling investigation reveals how some hospitals have expanded organ donor programs under protocols that blur the line between life and death and sparking lawsuits and public outcry. Joining me right now is, help me with the pronunciation, I hope I'm going to get it right. Is it Avinoam, Laby?
You can call me Avi. Thanks so much for having
Avi. Okay. Avi, specializing in medical malpractice and personal injury. Avi, welcome to the news desk. Thank you, sir, for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to getting into this important topic with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Avi, can you explain the legal definition of death pertaining to organ donation in New York, state of New York, and also across the country?
Yeah, so I want to start off with kind of a general explanation. There are these organ procurement organizations. We call them OPOs. Specifically in the case we're dealing with, it's called Live On New York. That's the big one in New York. I'm sure other states throughout the country have other big kind of players, so to speak. But these organ procurement organizations, they have incentives, large money incentives in getting as much organs as soon as possible from bodies. So you have situations where someone may not be completely brain dead yet. You may have a situation where it's an unidentified person. They call it a Jane Doe or a John Doe. It really comes down to the timing and the jumping over the hoops that you're supposed to go through in order to get to the organ donation, the end goal there.
That's quite amazing to think about, because you could have a Jane Doe that, you know, obviously we don't have identification, so you wouldn't know if this person is a donor, a legal donor, I suppose, of organs, and then come to find out after the organs are taken, you know, you find the name out of this person, the family retrieves the body, and missing whatever donors or, I guess, organs they donated.
And unfortunately, that's specifically what happened in a case that we're representing the family in. If I could go a little bit into some details,
Yeah,
the name of
for
the
sure.
case, the name of the person who passed away is Miriam Hoyos de Baldrich. It's a case where we represent the family in New York. It's a very sad situation where a 69-year-old person with dementia disappears from the home, eventually goes into New York City, gets hit by a train. The police officers pick her up. On her possession is only a note with her name on it and a Wyndham Hotel key card. The body gets sent to the hospital in Bellevue. She's considered a Jane Doe. She's put on life support, so to speak, but she's eventually turned brain dead. And eventually the CEO of the hospital is who authorizes her organ donation without the family ever being contacted, ever hearing anything for at least 5 days after it all happened. So we brought suit in New York against the hospital, the OPO, Live On New York, and the other kind of involved locations to try to bring justice and figure out what's going on with these organizations and how can they be held accountable.
Avi, how do you approach building a case when the medical records may be incomplete or intentionally vague?
That is unfortunately something that we see a lot with medical records, especially nowadays where it's almost the Wild West, where you have some people still handwriting records, some people still uploading them to the different, computerized systems, which make it easier in some ways, but harder in other ways, because sometimes it's just pressing a button or checking a box instead of actually writing down what's going on. So what you have to do is really you do the digging yourself as the attorney for the family. You really try to get all the documents. You send out HIPAA authorizations with medical requests to the hospitals. You try to do what's called depositions. You get answers under oath eventually throughout the case from the doctors, nurses, to try to get all the information to fill in the blanks, which you're referencing that we sometimes get.
So what legal recourse, and I know that this case is still active, I think the Baldrich case is still active, so what legal recourse do families have when they suspect organs were taken without proper authorization?
So that's a great question. The first thing you should do is contact a lawyer immediately. People attorneys that practice in this area, like my firm does, Gersowitz, Libo Korek. It's called a loss of sepulcher case. Sepulcher is the right of a decedent's family or next of kin to take possession of the body and do with the body what they will or what their religion tells them to do. In our situation, the woman is a devout Catholic. In the Catholic religion, you are not allowed to give away your organs to have them taken out before burial. So it's for many different reasons. You want to get an attorney to represent you to kind of immediately do the things that have to be done, because in our specific situation, because a New York hospital was involved, there are specific time limitations where if you don't know, you don't have the experience, you don't have an attorney telling you, you may pass the deadline and be stopped from bringing a suit just from the beginning. In New York, there's what's called a notice of claim statute, which means you have to file specific paperwork with them within a specific amount of time. Otherwise, you can't even bring a suit whatsoever. So my best advice would be contact an attorney as soon as possible, especially an attorney with knowledge and experience in this field like we do.
Are hospitals typically protected by legal immunity in organ donation cases? And how does this Baldrich case challenge that?
So that's a great question. The defendants in our case have actually made two separate motions to try to get out of the case. One of them being specifically what you're mentioning, which is kind of saying they have immunity, they can do whatever they want because they're working towards the greater good, so to speak. That's an argument that we see a lot also in general in medical malpractice cases, where doctors and hospital employees kind of say, we got into this to help the person, we should be immune, no matter what we did, we're trying to help. That's kind of the general argument that you hear a lot. So the response to that is there are rules, there are statutes, there are inter-hospital rules and regulations, there are codes, there are federal rules, there are state rules that have to be followed. And the reason those rules are in place is so they are followed. So that's really the overarching response to that.
So how is brain death legally defined, and why is that definition so critical in the organ procurement cases?
So the term brain dead, the reason that's brought up is because there's a specific time which you can harvest organs from a deceased person's body. So what happens a lot of the times, and I think that's a lot of what the article that came up recently, is that people are kind of in that middle area where there might be some movement of the arm or there might be some moving of the eyes, but other parts of the body that are being monitored or quote unquote dead. You could have someone that has some sort of neurological disease that makes them behave not like other people do when they're brain dead. So what it comes down to is that there's two types of donations that are known under what's called the Gift Act, which is something in New York, which is the law which governs all of the harvesting and donations. And you either have a unidentified person or an identified person. If the person is identified, you have to see, do they have an organ donation card? Is there anything showing that they agreed to it? Sometimes these organ procurement organizations go to people on their deathbeds and say to them, please check here, literally, in order to get the organ. And that's, putting aside the fact that I'm sure there's a huge, organs are needed as a general statement in this country. We have people that are online. That's the response we're getting a lot when we're talking about this as well. There's so many people that need these organs, but what we want to make sure is that they're procured in the right way and in a way that makes sense and is fair and is transparent. So it really comes down to, is the person brain dead or not? That's really the question.
Sure. Avi, what are some red flags that families should be watching for in hospital end-of-life decisions? As you mentioned, you've got the procurement people right there at the hospital bed just itching and looking for organs.
Again, it's been unfortunate, but I've heard this more than once, is that they just kind of pop up. These organ procurement people, they just kind of start lurking. Everyone kind of knows who they are that works in the hospital. And when they kind of hear that there's something that they could be involved in, they just kind of pop up and start communication, start having you sign things, look at documents, give you pamphlets. That's what I would be most alert of. If anyone approaches you or your loved one to discuss that, I would immediately contact an attorney. That would be my best advice if there's any sort of misunderstanding or disagreement with that. But that's what I've heard, is that there's the issue is that there is a motivation for them. It's about the paycheck. It's about as many organs as possible. In this DeBaldrich matter, they literally took out every organ possible. There's a checklist of what they could take out, and it's everything from the nails to the eyeballs to the skin. They're given away to people. They're giving it away to universities for study. And unfortunately, in our situation, it's the CEO of the hospital who signed off to allow this to happen, and that does not go by what the law says it should go by. So I highly stress for anyone, whatever state they're in, to contact an attorney as soon as possible.
Avi, I can see the procurement people kind of being maybe possibly bad characters. I know that they're working for a greater good, possibly. There is a need for organs across the country, so I can understand that. But it takes a doctor, to do this. So if there's any possibility that there is life left in the body, isn't it unethical for the doctor to say, well, roll them on in, let's go ahead and take the eyes?
Yeah, I'll take it a step before that. I mean, they should be first identifying who it is that they're doing this on and making sure that there is an express, intent and agreement to even go forward with that next step. Once that is, once that box is checked, so to speak, then the next thing would be for the doctors and the hospital personnel to follow their rules and regulations for whatever the OPO or the hospital has, where I'm sure there are many, more than one or two sections where you have to check, double check, triple check that the person is really brain dead. So I would say, negligence when it comes to medical malpractice, it comes to whether or not in New York at least, it comes to whether or not the doctor's actions meet that level of what an ordinary doctor would do under those circumstances. So if in this situation, the regulations say you got to make sure 3-4 different times this person is actually brain dead, that, if the doctor doesn't do that, then yes, I would say that would be medical negligence.
So with over 100,000 Americans waiting for transplants across the country, how do we balance urgency with ethical responsibility?
Yeah, I really see this as ultimately a statutory fix. There should be clearer, more delineated instructions as to specifically in what situation, what has to happen. If the person is unidentified, they should make them search social media. They should make them run their fingerprints through everything. That's another kind of shocking thing we found in this case, is that the decedent, Mr. Baldrich, was not fingerprinted until after they took out all the organs, and that's how they found the family. So it begs the question, if you would have fingerprinted right away, if that would have been what the law said you should have done, which they're saying they shouldn't have, then we wouldn't be here today. So I would say a uniform kind of law for the entire country for donations, but going into specifics of, in a specific situation, XYZ has to happen in order for the donation to go through.
Sure. So shed some light on necessary reforms and protections for both the patients and also the medical institutions.
Yeah, that kind of piggybacks on what we're saying. I really think that new legislation has to be both on the federal level and the state level. And I know they're working on it in New York. Nothing's been official yet, but it's something that's been in the works. It's just a clearer explanation by law as to what are the exact steps that need to be taken if a person is identified, if a person is showing signs of life, if a person is fluttering their eyes. We need a statute specifically explaining what can happen, because if it stays in the Wild West, so to speak, we see the results of things kind of getting fast forwarded so that the ultimate money is reached. So that's what we're trying to avoid here.
Yeah, very interesting case, Avi. Thank you so much for sharing the insights and some expertise in this incredibly complex and emotionally charged issue, I'm sure, for the family and everybody involved. I don't think this case is just a legal battle. It's a wake-up call for the need for transparency and consent and accountability for the medical system. Avi, thank you so much, sir. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend.
You too. All right, 16 past the hour. Quick break here at the news desk. We're back with more here on KFYR+.